What's up, everybody? This is Matt here again, and for my next blog post, I would like to mention about the year 1989. That was a year that it was obviously the end of that particular decade, and most of the people my generation would remember the collapse of the Berlin Wall, amongst a few other things in the world news, and it would also be almost a year to the day before Nelson Mandela was freed from prison. But let's start off with the month of January. Now, in January of 1989, the last weekend, my parents took me to the Lafayette Oceanfront Resort, which again used to be Forbes Resort. And there was this new building that was just completed called the Ledgeview Inn. And much like the Driftwinds, it had oceanfront views mostly, except that it was a little bit separated from the parking lot to get to Wells Beach, which I thought at the time was one of the most beautiful beaches anywhere because of the rock formations and the tidal pools to make excellent play areas for little kids. But those rock formations since then have increased, and some more of the beach has been kind of disappearing and eroding since then. But there was more sand around the steps to get to the beach back then. But that Saturday we went on January 28th. We ended up getting a nice oceanfront view of our hotel room. Plus, during the time in the afternoon at 3 o'clock, ABC Sports had aired the Professional Bowlers Tour, where it made a stop in Grand Prairie, Texas at Fall Bowl for the Quaker State Open. And I'll never forget the year before when I saw Bob Benoit roll that tremendous 300 game to receive $100,000 from True Value Hardware Stores and the $27,000 first place check when he upset the great Mark Roth. And on the archives of the PBA 60 greatest moments, that ended up in number 27 on the list. But anyway, in that particular tournament, it was Del Ballard Jr. who won 3 games in a row en route to victory, much like he did the previous week in the Showboat Invitational. And you know what was interesting about that, too, was after Del defeated Bob Benoit in the championship match, both gentlemen rode back from Las Vegas, Nevada to Texas. And Del agreed he would pay for the gasoline, and that's how they became doubles partners and roommates. But that was 3 o'clock in the time zone when I was seeing that. However, during the time we were in the hotel room around that, my mother took me swimming in a new indoor pool, which has now a kind of a 9 feet deep end and 2 seats to lay back. But it also came complete with a small, round whirlpool spa. And this was years before they expanded the spa and added the waterfall. So overall, in the overnight visit, I ended up visiting the pool 3 times. And when it was dinner time, my parents took me to this wonderful restaurant called Billy's Chowder House, which is located on 216 Mile Road, right on the center or halfway point from Mile Road, from Route 1 to Wells Beach. And I had a nice dinner there, some fish. So it was a great weekend to get away and from school. And by the way, at that time when I was in lab school, the letters in the lab stand for Lexington, Arlington, Burlington, Bedford, and now with an extra B, it's Billerica in Massachusetts. This is all part of the central system for kids with disabilities. And later on in my life, when I was job searching, I would eventually get a job at Vanpool in Bedford where it was kids in that same criteria. So, and then when I had the regular school day in kindergarten, then a couple of more days during the week, I would go from the bus to the May School in Burlington, Massachusetts, which was right behind in the kitty corner at the high school. So that was in January. But in March of 1989, my mother and I went up for another visit to Maine. But most notably was when my cousin Teresa Summers had turned 7 years old. She had her birthday party with her parents and brother Tim and cousins at Chuck E. Cheese when there was a location in Newington, New Hampshire. That Chuck E. Cheese was around longer than the Bowl USA, which was next door, where I enjoyed doing 10-pin bowling. So that, whenever you think of me at a Chuck E. Cheese at the time, you could picture me just going to the ball pit and playing around and frolicking. And sometimes in that ball, you would dig yourself deep, and sometimes your parents would be a little bit worried if you were visible at the time. So my mother was a little bit worried for me at one time when she pulled me out. I think I would pass out in the ball pit. And I also liked, in addition to the ball pit, the skee ball, which had its own scoring system. And I think it was only at that Chuck E. Cheese where I remember the digital display, and it was by the thousands you would score. But when Teresa had that birthday party that very day, I went from that one to another birthday party when I got home to Burlington, Massachusetts, because of one of my friends at the lab school had another birthday party at the Brunswick Bowlaway place. So you can imagine for one day how much exercise I would get and have a little extra piece of cake, unless I didn't have any cake at the Chuck E. Cheese before. But also during the March of 1989, Easter came early that year, which was the last weekend of March. And one of the greatest gifts that I got in my Easter basket was this very book. Now, when you see this on the cover, it only looks like a plain blue book with a star on it. But if you turn the page, you can see that it's called My Beach Adventure. And this was published by the folks at Create a Book in Milton, Florida. Right here is the cover page of a book. And on this corner over here, there's a little picture of me when I was that time at lab school, around 5 years old. How cute is that? And if you have a little time, I can read it to you. First of all, this first page says, this book was created especially for Matthew Summers Smith. And remember, my middle name is spelled Sommers. With love from Mommy and Daddy. My mother, Sally Summers Smith Wells, and my late father, Dennis Matthew Smith. March 25th, 1989. The first page on this book really is a nice picture at dawn of the beach area and some seagulls right by the water. It was an absolutely gorgeous day at Wells Beach. All the beach umbrellas were in place for those sun lovers who ventured to the beach today. The braver swimmers were already in the water. Matthew Summers Smith, age 5, could always find many exciting things to do. And you see that's a picture of what a typical beach area would look like. Some beach umbrellas, people in the water. Playing peacefully at the water's edge was a pleasure for Matthew. The waves would sometimes sneak up on Matthew when he was at least expecting them. Sometimes he just liked to dig in the sand with his toes and feel the cool water on a hot day. Now you can see in this picture, there's a mother and looks like a daughter and son dipping their toes in the water, and mother is putting some sand on the baby's toes there. The annual sandcastle contest was fun to enter. Matthew had practiced building both funny-looking and elaborate sandcastles with Terry, Tim, and Nicky. For this reason, Matthew always kept his shovel, bucket, sifters, and other beach tools ready. In this picture, you can see there's a girl with her beach toys and building a nice-looking sandcastle. It looks like dry sand to me, but... And in case you were wondering about those other three names, this is my cousin Teresa Summers, who I mentioned, who turned 7 in March. And then Tim, of course, my older cousin, who is Teresa's older brother. And the name Nicky is one of my best friends I ever had at lab school. His name is Nick Leach, and I got to know him and his family extremely well. He was a little bit more on the autism side than me, and both of us had a common habit that most kids with autism do, and it's either we kind of rock back and forth in our seats, or we have that annoying habit of flapping. I'm sure if you have kids and you're looking at that video right now, you should say to yourself, take it from me, it's a bad habit, but I got more used to trying to break that habit when I got a little older. Now let's continue the book. It was entertaining to watch people riding surfboards. It really did not look that difficult to Matthew. Some of the surfers could even stay on the boards all the way to the beach. Maybe one day. There you see there's a guy who was in a suit and surfing a wave there. Water bike rides looked exciting. It would sure be fascinating to race along the edge of the water. Matthew could not decide which would be more thrilling, being a passenger or a driver. As a driver, he could stop when he wanted and look for shells or sand crabs scurrying from hole to hole. And you can see there was a beach resort there, and there's a couple of water bikes around the edge. Terry, Tim, and Nicky had helped select a kite for Matthew that was specially made for the strong beach winds. He loved to run up and down the beach with his kite, sometimes with others, and occasionally just by himself. Now, if it's a windy day on the beach, then you can go fly a kite, and you could pretend about Mary Poppins, and hopefully you don't end up with a string around yourself and be like Charlie Brown. Sack races were not only amusing to observe, but also engaging to participate in at Wells Beach. Matthew practiced at home with Terry, Tim, and Nicky. It was not hard for him to be Terry, Tim, and Nicky in his daydreams. And as you can see in this picture right here, outside another beach resort, there's some kids trying to win the sack race. Fishing at the beach could be a pleasant pastime. Matthew thought it would be tasty to catch a fish at Wells Beach and eat it right away. Fresh fish was bound to taste much better than frozen fish bought at a supermarket. This is one of my favorite pictures from the book because I see a little boy in red shorts and a green top catching a fish, and that kind of resembled a little bit of me from my memory, because later in the summer, I would go on another trip and I would learn how to fish myself. So if you're ever at a beach right by where there's a little bridge and a little estuary, then you can go fishing. And I'm sure that on the edge of Wells Beach in the harbor, there are bridges that are like that. The colorful sails of all the sailboats around Wells Beach always caught the eye of Matthew. Lessons were given there, and one day Matthew was sure that he was going to sign up for them. There you can see a number of sailboats right there in the picture. What would Terry, Tim, and Nicky say if Matthew learned how to pilot his own sailboat? Everyone would surely want to go with him. Of course, he would let them. It even looked adventurous to Matthew to watch the small sailboats flip over every once in a while. There you can see on this picture right here, a couple gentlemen are going on a sailboat cruise, and it's a clear day. If sailing was too tame, then Wells Beach also had jet skis. Matthew had mixed feelings about trying them. It looked exciting, but he thought they were a bit scary and too fast. Matthew planned to start off very slow. Now, in this picture right here, this gentleman is standing up, and he likes the fast pace of this jet ski right here. But even so, I still think it's a little bit fast, and you gotta start off slow if you want to make it your way to the top. Just a few blocks from the beach itself were a variety of intriguing activities. The giant water slide was always swift. There were so many ways for Matthew to go down the slide on his pad. Maybe next time he could try a new way. You can see a brave water lover there on a pad going down a slide. And not too far from the beaches around here in New Hampshire, Maine, we do have water parks. Most notably, there's Water Country in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. There's also Aquabog in Saco, Maine, and Funtown Splashtown, USA. So this gives you an idea of the example. If he tired of the water at Wells Beach, a pool was always nearby to keep Matthew cool on especially hot days. How relaxing to just lie and float. It was fun for him to watch seagulls fly overhead or try to distinguish different make-believe objects in the puffy white clouds. Then you can see a family right here on tubes at another water park down a lazy pool river. Sometimes when Matthew, along with Terry, Tim, and Nicky, had too much fun in the sun, they looked for other engrossing things to do. It might be motorcycle rides, mini golf, bumper cars, roller coaster rides, go-karts, the Ferris wheel, or maybe the merry-go-round. This is one of those examples right here, motorcycle ride at an amusement park. And I think the closest one to the beach in my memory was York's Wild Kingdom. But I've also been to Old Orchard Beach before, and that's home to Palace Playland. So if it's open during the summer, go give it a try. Today, there was even a big parade at the beach. Matthew thought it would be interesting to ride on a float with Terry, Tim, and Nicky. The costumes he imagined them wearing were hilarious and made him roll with laughter. I think this is another amusement park right here, somewhere down in southern United States, but this is an example of the parade and a contest of something. We never really had a parade nearby Wells Beach, but this is a good example of what I mean. Yes, Wells Beach was simply amazing. Matthew enjoyed peaceful strolls down the beach at sunset. It was always so calm at that time of day. Could there be any other beach prettier than Wells Beach? And again, sunset here, you see the beach and the seagulls. Matthew Summer Smith didn't think so. And the last page, it's Matthew Summer Smith. Enjoy this gift from Mommy and Daddy, March 25th, 1989. So that was a good Easter gift for me. And going to all different kinds of beaches since then. I've been to Old Orchard. I've been to York. And since I've been dating Janine, we always like to go every summer to Hall Beach, right where they have their summer homes. So there are mixed feelings about which beach I think now is more prettier than Wells Beach. So that is what I have to say, and I hope you enjoyed this blog post. So thanks very much, guys, and stay safe.